welcome to this edition of the Tri-State Report. I'm Shelley Till. This is a special program designed to talk about the impact and response of COVID-19 in the Dubuque land area and beyond. Today, I am very excited once again to have the Executive Director of the Iowa High School Athletic Association, Tom Keating, join me, and a former Dubuquer. How are you doing, Tom?
I'm great, thanks.
Good. Thanks for being here. You made a lot of people really happy this week with the announcement that we are going to play ball. And in that regard, thanks for pinch hitting for us here today and joining us. But it's a lot of things, a lot of moving parts are going into this. It's not as simple as just show up and let's throw the ball out there. So let's talk about, first of all, if I'm a coach, what restrictions, what guidelines do I have to follow in terms of the relation to COVID-19 to protect the safety of my players while we're practicing and playing?
Sure. I think there's some general things and then, a few specific things. And the overarching philosophy here is common sense, right? So we're asking that only the students who are healthy and are feeling well participate, and coaches alike. And so we're asking them to do a check when the kids come in. We're asking them to ask the kids, are you feeling well? Do you have a fever? And we're asking the kids to check at home prior to coming to the diamond, because quite frankly, we don't have the capacity. Some districts won't have the capacity to test all their kids with temperature. So those questions will be asked. Anyone who does not feel well will be sent home and can return after they have a fever below 100.3 for 24 hours. And again, some of that is just going to be people being honest and people doing what's right for themselves and for other people. We're asking coaches to, in terms of dugouts, no dugout use during practices, clean equipment prior to practice and after practice, ask the kids to bring hand sanitizer of their own. One of the questions we got, Shelley, from folks was, what about balls? Do we need to sterilize balls after every drill, et cetera? And the answer, honestly, from IDPH was, it's much more effective to clean your hands than to worry about cleaning balls after every drill. So, when they're taking a water break, go hand sanitize, and that should help. As you saw yesterday, probably in the news, there's some research now that says that COVID is not spread as quickly or as extensively by touching things, surfaces, as it is through transfer of droplets. So that's important. When it comes to ball games and dugouts and things like that, we're asking kids to spread out. We're asking coaches to consider extending the dugout down the foul line toward the outfield fence so that kids can stand or be seated there. In order to,
it goes to the social distancing, the 6 feet apart. Is there a requirement or a guideline in place that they need to follow that while they're playing?
Well, again, here's where Dr. Pedati and Dr. Garvey from the IDPH mentioned that what the research is telling us is if you are closer than 6 feet apart for 30 minutes, that's when the risk goes up. Mm-hmm. And so in a baseball or softball game, the chances of somebody being that close to each other for 30 minutes at a time is not great. We were on a Zoom with the Baseball Coaches Association yesterday, and we said, let's try not to have 30-minute innings, so we don't have anybody in the dugout for 30 minutes. But, I don't want to make light of that, but what I'm saying is that casual interaction, it's kind of like, that first baseman holding the runner on, right. That's not lasting very long. And again, the catcher or the first baseman tagging the runner who's diving back into the bag, the chance of getting it that way, not real high. And so in that sense, we're okay. Plus, on a field, we're spread out.
Right.
What we told our coaches was, how about, and they already do this. So if you're doing infield and you've got 2 third basemen, 2 shortstops, 2 second basemen, just tell them stay apart. Wait till your turn to get in and then jump in, and they do that anyway. So.
What about in terms of the umpires? Because typically they're right on the shoulder of the catcher. Is there going to be any adjustments made for them?
Well, I think again, 30 minutes at a time, right? So the umpire between batters can step back, stay away. If an umpire chooses, there's no requirement to wear a mask, but if an umpire chooses to wear a mask, they can do that. If a catcher chose to wear a mask, they could do that. Again, I wouldn't expect that that's going to happen a lot, but it might.
Let's talk about fans. What does it look like? What changes can fans expect when they show up at a game?
Yeah, I think really the big thing is going to be spread out. It's baseball and softball in Iowa. One of the beauties of the game is it's a community game, and people bring their lawn chairs, they bring their camping chairs, and they line up along the fence, and they're spread out anyway. And the key again is spread out family-wise. So if there's 3 or 4 of you in the bleachers and you're from the same family, there's no reason you can't sit together. But separate yourself from, maybe a person who's not in your family. We're not asking ADs to come out with measuring tape and saying, hey, you're too close. But there may be cases where they say, the bleachers are full right now. We're kind of at capacity, so you'll have to stand and watch or use your own chair.
What would you say also in terms of masks? I know you mentioned umpires have the option. Will masks be required or suggested for fans and for players?
I think that depends on their own comfort level. The reality is, once you touch a mask, it's no longer effective. Mm-hmm. And, I think it gives more of a psychological feeling of comfort than anything. If you're not wearing it right, it's not helpful. Mm-hmm. So we're not going to require it. But if people feel like they will be better protected and they know how to wear a mask and not touch it, but why not? And same goes for players, coaches, and umpires.
And Tom, we're condensing a season into about 4 weeks with
right.
play starting on June 15th. So what does scheduling look like for all of these teams?
Yeah, well, if you know ADs, they've already been planning for contingencies. So conferences have gotten together and put some possible scenarios. I'm not sure they thought the season would start June 15th, so they may have had to, find some games for those 2-week periods before July 1st. But I think most of them have already put a season together. Those who haven't are working within their conferences to figure out how to make that happen. So we're leaving it up to the districts to take care of. We did not reduce the number of games that are allowed. We know people aren't going to play 40, but quite frankly, some, if I'm a bigger school and I've got 12 pitchers, I can probably play 4 games a week. If I'm a smaller school and I have 2 or 3 pitchers, probably not. But that's going to be my decision. We didn't want to put restrictions that were too restrictive on some. So if we leave it where it is, we think people will make good decisions.
Can you speak to the role of media? Will media be allowed to cover games and any restrictions or guidelines for them?
Yeah, they will. I think the only change they might see in some cases is we've asked that only essential personnel be on the field. So, and in the dugout areas. So that's players, coaches, and umpires. So statisticians, pitch count people, official scorers, media photographers, those folks will be outside the fence. But otherwise, yeah, we want them there.
I would think that there's a role for media for people from an exposure standpoint, just to make sure. And Tom, I know we touched briefly on this in terms of umpires, but is there any concern with quantity of umpires who are available and feeling comfortable to cover all of these games?
Sure. We did some surveying. The Girls Union did some, and we reached out to some assigners to do some surveying. And what we found was the majority are saying they will umpire. And then, another group is saying, I want to wait and see what kind of things are in place. But we think we're going to have enough, especially at the varsity level. Districts that choose to play freshman or JV ball, they may have a little more difficulty, but we're not getting that sense right now. So that's good news.
Yeah. And then can you also speak to what happens if a player or a coach on a team or a couple players actually end up contracting coronavirus during the season?
Sure. We've instructed, and the Department of Education has instructed school districts to notify the county health department immediately, and then they will provide the guidance, because it could be, as you mentioned, could be one player, it could be three, it could be an umpire, it could be a coach. And so the county health department will give guidance on, all right, what are the next steps? What do we need to do? Who do we need to inform? And what do they need to do? Rather than us saying somebody has to be quarantined for 14 days, we're leaning on the people who know that stuff, and that's not our realm. The Department of Health, it's their realm.
Yeah, and we've all heard the saying, "There's no crying in baseball," but apparently, according to Major League Baseball this year, there's also no spitting.
True.
Can you talk about just kind of those protocols that are in place or suggestions that are in place, and they're really changing in behaviors that are very normal in sports?
Yeah, you bet. And I think obviously there's always been a high school rule of no tobacco, so that hopefully won't be a problem. Sunflower seeds seem to be the thing, right? And we've said no sunflower seeds at practice or at the games, the general, if anybody's watched Teenage Boys, they spit,
Yeah.
And so what I can tell you from my psych days, my background in psych, is that when you're talking about changing a behavior, making somebody aware of their behavior is almost as effective as putting a punishment or a consequence on it. So if they know they're not supposed to be spitting, two things are going to happen. One is they're going to, as they attempt to, they're going to catch themselves. And the other is they're going to have teammates that go, dude, what are you doing? So we think there'll be some self-regulation there.
Absolutely. Well, Tom, thank you so much for taking time out of your day and updating us on these. And again, appreciate everything that you're doing. And you've given us a ray of hope to play ball again.
Yeah, we're excited too. This is what we're built for.
That's right.
Thanks, Shelley.
Coming up next is Dan Kroger from the Dubuque Leisure Services. Welcome back. I'm Shelley Till, and joining me now is Dan Kroger from Dubuque Leisure Services. Nice to see you, Dan.
Hi, nice to see you. Thanks for having me.
Dan, this week, Governor Reynolds announced a lot of things that will be reopening. One of those she referred to were pools, and that they would be allowed to be open for lessons and lap swimming. Yesterday, there's a notice on your Facebook page for Dubuque Leisure Services stating that a decision has not yet been made for the public pools in Dubuque in that regard. Can you just give us an idea of what needs to happen in order for the department to give that approval to open pools this summer in Dubuque?
Well, I think first and foremost, the most important thing that needs to happen is that we feel comfortable with the level of safety for both the patron and for our own staff. As of yesterday, there are 13 communities throughout Iowa that have already chosen to close their pools for the entire year. That's something that we're not at yet. We want to be able to take our time, really think about all of the different advantages or disadvantages to opening the facilities this year. We're just really being cautious. We realize it is a major decision for this community. It impacts a lot of residents. It also impacts a lot of staff, right? Seasonal staff. All of our employees that work to operate those pools and keep them open and safe. So there's a large group of people that could be impacted by whether the pool is open or not. So again, going back to safety, pools inherently are a high risk activity. They're also a low cost recreation opportunity for the whole community. So. Again, going back to being important, as it's an equitable experience for everybody. And we realize that. But again, safety is key. There's a lot of different things that have to happen prior to entering the pool And while being in the pool, especially during this time, person-to-person contact and social distancing is still big. The CDC is working on a formula for to try and help pools understand maybe the total number of people that could enter a pool facility. What we do know is if we do open, there will be a reduction in the amount of people that are allowed in. So we have to try to programmatically figure out a way to make it so we can have potentially different segments of time throughout the day where we can have people come in safely and exit safely, be able to clean and sanitize contact spaces, and then be ready for the next wave of participants to come in. Again, there is another concern is with the safety of staff and training. Currently until up to yesterday with the governor's proclamation, it still is unclear as to what we can do with our lifeguard staff as far as training and in-water training. So there are many aspects of that we have to look at because, as you can imagine, lifeguarding is almost like a sport, right? Where it's that muscle memory and that constant repetitive practice that helps when participants are in an actual activity. So saving a person's life when they're struggling in the water is a quick, spontaneous thing that staff need to be able to just not think and just do. So that requires constant training and constant training with multiple people. So
Dan,
trying to figure out.
Do you have a
Sure.
timeline on making a decision in terms of the pool?
As far as making the decision to go, I do not know that yet. I can tell you that from the time that we would be told to go, it would take us about a month until we would actually open the pool. So as an example, for if it was today, they said, let's open the pool or both pools, we would be open on June 20th or something like that.
Okay. And let's pivot a little bit to, because you do a lot at Leisure Services in the summertime. Let's pivot to youth sports. What is the status of your offerings for youth programming for the summer?
Again, we're evaluating all those different programs. Staff has been working extremely hard, and it has been difficult over the last month and a half, 2 months, trying to figure out what we can do with our programs. Again, safety is the biggest thing. And the second thing is the environment. How much of the environment can we control, and how many of the potential risks can we reduce? And so we actually sent a survey out earlier in April, kind of in the height of the unknown, right? At just trying to get a feel for where people were at, where the community was thinking as far as what they wanted to do this summer, trying to look ahead. And it was clear that we had almost 800 respondents to our survey, which was phenomenal. It was only open for like 4 days. It was clear that the majority of people surveyed were excited to see what we were able to come up with. They understood that it was going to look different, and they understood that it probably wasn't going to be as much as we're typically offering in the past. But they were excited to see it. But at the same time, it was also very clear that people were unsure as far as if and when they were going to participate. One of the questions asked about the amount of time they were willing to wait before they came back to programming. And the majority of respondents, so well over 400 respondents, said they would wait anywhere from 1 week to a month before they would feel comfortable coming back into a group environment. So that uncertainty is difficult to try and weigh when you're trying to put programs together. So what we're doing is talking about that controlled environment. We're looking at our class locations. What would be the maximum number of participants that we could have in that space and still be able to distance? Can that program be moved outside from an indoor location so that we can either keep our numbers the same or offer to a couple more people? Do we want to do more parent-taught classes where the parents are more of the instructor and the instructors are kind of instructing them, again, to reduce that contact? Supplies, can we give each participant their own supplies that they can get when they come and then they can take with them when they leave to mitigate the sharing of different things? So there's all those kind of factors that staff is trying to figure out. There will be a summer. There will be some programs this summer. Again, they're going to look different. There aren't going to be as many. Again, staff is working extremely hard trying to figure out the best fit. And this affects everybody. Like I said, any reduction in programming is an impact on the potential for seasonal staff. And it's an impact in the community. There won't be as many offerings to be able to sign up for.
Well, we appreciate everything that you're doing and the care and attention that you're putting into keeping the community safe while still trying to find a way to provide these services. Dan, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You bet. Up next is Kevin Lynch with Dubuque Initiatives. Welcome back. I'm Shelley Till. Joining me now is Kevin Lynch with the Dubuque Initiatives. Nice to see you again, Kevin.
You too, Shelley, and happy birthday.
Hey, thanks. I appreciate that. They're always exciting in this time of sheltering in place, but I did get out, so that was a good thing.
Good for you.
Kevin, since the last time we spoke about this Dubuque Initiatives bridge funding, what has changed to kind of pivot things with this kind of second round?
Sure. Actually, in terms of the actual loan agreement, we just really cleaned up some language and some terminology. But as you know, things have been rapidly changing worldwide, and that's what necessitated having these changes made to the agreement. So to give you an example, originally we were calling it a bridge loan and found that some of the people that had interest were kind of reluctant about that term bridge loan and about having to pay the money back when they got their federal money through the payroll protection plan or the EIDL. I forget what that acronym is even for, but when we first started this, I think everyone was under the impression that the federal and state money is something that was going to be coming quickly and easily and make businesses and private individuals whole real quickly. And as we've seen, that hasn't quite happened. So in order to make the loan program more appealing to businesses in Dubuque, we changed the name to a small business loan, and we took off the restriction that they had to pay it back once they got their federal money. And so now they can just easily convert it to a 3-year loan if they choose to do so. If they want to pay it back out of the federal money, they can, but it's really meant to be more flexible. So that was one of the big changes. The other one is we expanded it to include sole proprietors, independent contractors, and self-employed people, because a lot of those types of business owners were falling through the cracks. So it was really just more an attempt to clean things up and make it so it would work for as many businesses as possible.
And you mentioned some of the new self-employment or the gig kind of workers. So what, in terms of, is this a one-time thing? They have to just apply for this once? And if people have done so previously, do these new terms apply to their old loan?
Yeah, the new terms would apply to the old loans, of course, and then we really, have not talked about what, how long this will last. I don't think we've really set a sunset date on it because none of us really know how this is all going to play out, and so we want to be as flexible about it as we can. And so I think what the will of the board would probably be is to just leave it open until there's no interest expressed in it anymore, and close it at that time. And so if somebody comes late to the game, or they've had second thoughts, or their situation changed, it's going to be an option for them as well.
That's great. So it's not too late. And what is the process to apply for this?
Again, that has not changed. So all they really need to do is call the small business helpline. That number is 563-588-3350, and they can call during Monday through Friday business hours, 8:30 to 4. And the people that answer the phone will help get them kind of vetted through the process and get them connected with the loan counselors at IHSAA, who has been our partner throughout all of this. And we've been very lucky to have them. They've been wonderful for us. And then they will get the paperwork started. There's a very small amount of paperwork, which is something you wouldn't necessarily expect when you're taking out a loan. And the money should be in your account within 2 days.
Well, Kevin, we certainly appreciate everything that you and your group with Dubuque Initiatives is doing, And in this time where people, like you said, thought that they were going to have this money right away, and there's a lot of places that are struggling. So thanks for coming on and sharing it with us once again. And thanks for everything that you're doing in the Dubuque community.
You bet. Thanks for having me, Shelley.
You bet. Take care and have a great holiday weekend.
You too. Bye-bye.
That does it for another edition of the Tri-State Report. Please join us every Friday at 6 p.m., Saturday at 11, and Sunday at 9:30 a.m. Stay safe, be well, and we'll see you next time.